Good morning, Michael. I'm sorry I'm running a little behind because I was in trying to figure. Robert says, here for the music. Robert, we aim to please. What did Richard LeBar say about our music?
Oh, yeah.
Like Japanese.
I don't remember what he said. It was funny, though.
Yeah, it was funny. It was like, what? No, that's not where I was going with that. So, for those of you who do not know, Rumble has screwed us over again, and we're live actually on the Digital Currency Dialectic with Julianne Romanello page. So I'll have to go back and fix that today because I didn't have anything else I wanted to do. So thanks, Rumble. We just love being on with you. So I just honestly, I'm not going to say I'm like the smartest podcaster in the box. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say like, you know, I know what I'm doing all the time. I'm not saying that, but I mean, this can't be that hard.
Well, obviously it is. Yeah, obviously it is.
I mean, I've done everything that I can think of to make that thing work, and it just gives me the slip every single time. So how are you this morning?
Good. You know, I heard you talking about AI with Mary in the green room.
Yeah.
And you know that Trump's already pledged $500 billion in private AI investment.
Yeah, right? That's what we were talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and that goes, think about this, Jenny. Think about it from the thing you hate the most. What does government pride themselves on? Creating jobs.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, that's all it's about.
So the government is going to massively invest in AI, and AI is going to literally what?
Remove all the jobs.
I mean, I see it.
But that's what we did with the green energy deal. I mean, it was all about jobs, and it was all about, oh, we got this money to do this. How many people did we get in these green energy jobs? Yeah. I mean, you looked at Canoe. Canoe came in writing an article about that today, trying to finish that today. Canoe comes in, oh, we'll have 2,000 jobs. The next time you see it in writing, it's 1,500 jobs. Then we're down to 500 jobs. Then, oh, guess what? They never brought one job to Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, these guys, Governor Stitt, these elected officials, I mean, I don't know where they live. It's not in reality. It's not here with the rest of us on the planet. They have some kind of goofy deal going on in their head that makes I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
It's
well,
just
I'm just telling you from the investments that we continue to see, which, you know, a lot of these deals, they seem like pie in the sky, but, you know, when you look at stuff like in the private investment world, you're looking, you know, 5, 7, 10, 15 years down the road. That's kind of how the investment side of those things work out. I mean, we've seen investments now for the last several years. I mean, we've done a lot of infrastructure deals, like actual fiber optic and data centers and stuff like that.
And we even do need some transmission lines.
Yeah.
We actually do. Our electric grid has not been properly managed. It's all over the place. That is something that does need to be dealt with in our infrastructure, but we don't need them in everybody's backyards running them between windmills.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to see a lot more now on the software side of it, the AI side. And I'm just telling you, Jenny, every single white collar job that's out there is literally, in my opinion, from what I see, this is not like total Terminator type of, you know, we're not talking about Skynet, but we're talking about
now we're not.
Okay. I'll give that to you. I'll give that to you. But I'm just saying, your basic lawyers, your basic doctors, your basic accountants, your basic white collar jobs across the board, your basic engineers, they're all going to be replaced. They're all going to be replaced by AI. I can tell you that, probably within 10 years.
Well, I mean, if we don't stop it, I mean, the government isn't here to give us our own money back and stuff. That's not what they're here to protect our liberty. And if they really wanted to do something, Trump wouldn't be giving $500 billion of our money to AI. He would be first trying to figure out how to put AI in a box where it's manageable, that it doesn't become Skynet. Because until we do that first, I don't know how we make this work.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's like that video I sent you, you know, that we were gonna in one of these shows, we need to show that little cartoon depiction that the girl does with the AI integration, you know, with monitoring the progress, your brain waves and stuff.
Oh yes, that one. Okay, yes.
Okay. Well, the thing is, when you have these massive companies, what's their number one expense? All of their human capital. And remember, that's basically, I sent you that other video with Larry Fink and the other guys. And we need to play that too. I think I have that. I'll have to get that queued up. But basically, they consider us human capital. That's literally what they called us. This was in a WEF presentation. They were talking about, you know, the future and AI and all this stuff. They literally just consider us human capital. So, you know, where's their biggest expense? Payroll, healthcare, pension. You think they're not going to want a freaking robot to come on board that performs 24 hours a day, replaces 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people? I mean, come on. That's why, in my opinion, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going and keep going. And I mean, because you've got the biggest money people in the world that want to basically automate
a piece of it.
Yeah. So it's here. It's heading that way.
You know, Trump takes that many issues to forward the ideas. He's a president for the people. It's possible he's bringing it up to see how we, the people, will react. See if we learned our lessons. I'm not sure about that stuff. I don't, because he's a businessman for most.
But Jenny, he is in the service industry.
I think he gets these things, I don't know, like back-ass words, where he you know, he's the business person, but that business person isn't stopping to think about the liberty of all of the people, you know. So I think, you know, I don't know. I'm not saying I don't like Trump. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the one thing that we can't do as people, and you and I have said this before, the one thing we can't do as people is go, night, night. Oh, we got elected. See you later. I mean, that's the one thing we can't do. We have got to be vigilant. We've got to stay engaged. You know, he's president, but we also have our own problems in the state. And I've told everybody, and I'll say it again, the one word I will not say when I say the Pledge of Allegiance is indivisible, because that's a big fat lie. We are divisible states, and that was Thomas Jefferson. That was his whole idea. We would be incubators of ideas if we were 50 independent states. So, we have our own troubles here, and we need to we can't go back to night. But I don't want to keep going because we're already 11 minutes in, and Mary has so much stuff to talk about. So we the people need to write him. I sent my first letter yesterday. Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, we have to talk about these things. So there's a big fight on Twitter now going about. So McMahon, I can't remember her first name, is the one that he put in charge of basically closing down the Department of Education. But he has appointed a second person with her that people are just infuriated about. She's apparently a leftist, essentially, and a leftist public educator. And Mary may know something about it. Maybe Mary's ready to come on and we can go in that way. So good morning, Mary.
Good morning. I could actually support some AI if it did nothing but troll the government information, connect the dots, and catch the politicians doing the wrong thing. I would be in on that.
Bada bing.
Well, I'm sure there'll be an app for that, Mary.
And there's an app for that.
Hey, if a college kid can write an app that tracks Nancy Pelosi's stock trades, I think this can be done.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot that. Well, we need to have one tracking Markwayne Mullins stock trades as well.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So what do you have for us today, woman?
Well, today, actually help me with this, Michael. I want to share my slides.
Well, I can do it.
You can do it? Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Today, I want to talk a little bit. There's a lot of focus at the federal level about our corrupted justice system. But one thing we can't forget is that most prosecutions, or prosecutions that don't happen that should, happen at the local level in our state's district courts. And in this battle to rid our schools of child sexual predators, it really observably seems like our courts are standing in the way. They're making it much harder. In rural communities, education leaders are part of the local government. They are local elites. And observably, in a couple of different rural communities, just the ones I've looked into, we have some problems, some huge stumbling blocks toward justice that are favoring the perpetrator and not the victim. So my question for today is for victims of child sexual abuse. Is it more difficult to obtain justice in rural Oklahoma? And if that abuse happens at school, is it even more difficult? I would argue that it is.
Yeah, I would say yes, definitely.
It sure seems like it. So I just want to take 1 minute for your viewers to sort of set the stage about where we're going to talk about in Oklahoma. So if you look at this map, you'll see that we have Wetumka up there where the red dot is, and we have Wewoka sort of down by the bottom. So that's the two municipalities we're going to talk about. Those are the two school districts, so the school jurisdictions. If you look down in the bottom right, you'll see that's Seminole County in red. So you get an idea of where we are in the state.
Yeah.
So Wetumka's in northern Seminole. Oh, no, that's actually Hughes County on the map. That's Hughes County. So Wetumka's in northern Hughes County. And then over on the left of this map, we get into this line here, Seminole County. So this is all Judicial District 22. Pontotoc, Seminole, and Hughes are all together. So jurisdiction at the state level falls to District 22. So you got to think too about county level when you're in rural Oklahoma. Law enforcement oftentimes means the sheriff's office. There are a lot of rural communities that if they have a local police force, it's very, very small. And when something big happens, it's almost always the sheriff's office that investigates and turns things over to the DA, okay? So then if you look up in the top left-hand corner, only in Oklahoma, This is the tribal map up here. And if you look at where Hughes County, Seminole County is, it's right where this mess of jurisdictional confusion happens. So in this area, you have the Muskogee Nation, Creek Nation, what they call the Muskogee Creek area. You have the Seminole area, the Joint Creek Seminole area. You have Chickasaws here, and you have Choctaws. So given what we know is the fallout of the McGirt versus Oklahoma decision, this is a really confused prosecutorial judicial mess, is what I would call it.
Steph is following you. She says, so how does that affect McGirt?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you for the lead-in, Steph.
Yeah.
Let's talk about McGirt. Let me answer that. So McGirt. Let's talk about McGirt versus Oklahoma. I know everyone here probably understands that that's a Supreme Court decision that happened in 2020. And the fallout from it is that state and local law enforcement have no jurisdiction over tribal lawbreakers on tribal land, which essentially, for simplicity, is Eastern Oklahoma. Okay. So McGirt is a Hughes County guy. This all happened in this area. It was brought by the Muskogee Nation. The case was very much about power and not about protection. And if you think about 2020, when this decision was made, we were really at the height of identity politics. Yeah. And the United States Supreme Court really leaned in on the identity politics in a very surprise 5-4 decision in McGirt versus Oklahoma. Okay. But it caused all this chaos. Now the federal government and the tribes are the only ones who can touch such a prosecution if the offender is of tribal descent. And you get into this area where all these tribes overlap. They have to have agreements with the local law enforcement, and that did and didn't happen in a lot of cases. So it was a mess. But the thing nobody has ever asked, which I find fascinating, is why, if they were going to do this power play to take back jurisdiction of law enforcement in Eastern Oklahoma, why Jim C. McGirt? Why this man? Why this case? Did they pick him?
That was a gross case.
Yeah, it is. That's a perfect word for it. They promised, there are tribal and non-tribal people who have committed every crime you can think of in Oklahoma. Yeah. It could have been a theft crime. It could have been a burglary crime. It could have been a drug conviction. It wasn't. It was this man, which, if it wasn't so sad, it'd be fascinating. So Jim C. McGirt, he was a heinous pedophile. There's no way around it. Yeah. In 1989, when he was in his 30s, he was convicted on 2 counts of forcible oral sodomy involving children. That was in Oklahoma County. In 1997, when he was in his 40s, the charge was first-degree rape by instrumentation, lewd molestation, forcible sodomy of a 4-year-old girl in Wagner County. So this man was serving life, 2 500-year sentences. And the one thing that made him, I believe, attractive to the tribe when they got together and decided they were going to go for this power play is that he was very litigious. From jail, he filed more than 25 grievances, filings, appeals. He was very unhappy with every way he was being treated, and he was totally willing to fight for it. The other thing is,
I do find it kind of gross in itself that somebody who mistreated small children sexually is complaining about his treatment in prison.
Well, if you go and read some of his grievances, and you can, it's amazing. There's no concern for anyone but self here. This is extremely sociopathic. So McGirt, who they swore would never walk free, when this decision was made and everyone was overreacting, the tribes will have agreements, the federal government will pick up the prosecutions. His state sentences were vacated, and they said, we're going to retry him in federal court. He'll never see the light of day. In federal court, they gave him a plea agreement, and they allowed him to plead guilty to just 1 count of aggravated sexual abuse. Nothing associated with children, just aggravated sexual abuse. He was given a 30-year sentence and credit for time served. So Jim C. McGirt is out. As of last May, he's out. He lives in Hughes County, where we're going to talk about. And it forces us to question, was this the deal all along? Did the federal government partner with the tribes and find someone willing to do this and promise him his freedom? So
but why? That's the thing. Why? Why him? Why a pedo?
That is a very good question. It seems it's always about kids. I don't know how to answer that, but it is always observably about kids.
It's just crazy to me.
I agree. Okay, so let's go back to, there's one case I do want to highlight before we start talking about Wetumka. So now we're back here right down the road from Wetumka in Wewoka. And this is Cody Barlow. Cody Barlow, this was in the news. Middle school principal, coach, youth pastor, accused of molesting adolescent boys, 6th grade in particular, at his school. The civil complaint was settled. There was a suit in Eastern Court, U.S. Eastern Court in Oklahoma, against the administrator, against him, against the school system, and they settled it for $1.9 million. Let me read you a little bit from that case, just a little bit from the original complaint. It says, on the morning of October 12th, 2022, Wewoka Middle School counselor Ashley Aslan walked into Barlow's office and witnessed Barlow standing behind a 7th grade boy, rubbing the shoulders of the boy and thrusting his hips back and forth against the back of the boy. Miss Aslan let out a yelp, but Barlow did not stop. Miss Aslan then screamed. Barlow then sat down and placed the boy in his lap over what Miss Aslan observed to be his erect penis. Sorry to start your morning that way. Miss Aslan called the Wewoka Police Department, who came and escorted Barlow off the premises. She was so distraught over what she had witnessed, she was unable to drive herself home, and a police officer had to take her home. The same day, Wewoka Superintendent Dr. Shelley Gamble contacted a select group of Wewoka Middle School parents and requested they come to her office. Upon arriving, parents met Dr. Gamhill, and she informed him that Barlow had engaged in appropriate contact with, quote, several boys. During the meeting with parents, she said that on another occasion, in approximately September of that year, a parent had walked into Barlow's office and observed him molesting another boy in the same way that Miss Aslan had observed. Dr. Gamble also disclosed that another of Barlow's victims was Native American. Much later, on October 12th, Dr. Gamble notified the Oklahoma State Department of Education that she had placed Barlow on administrative leave, and she admitted, as of that date, she knew of at least 4 to 5 students involved in Barlow's misconduct. Okay.
Where is that woman now?
Oh, she's still there, I'm sure. I mean, I'll have to go look, but yeah, no, wait, no, there's more. So that's from the civil complaint, and you can see how thorough a civil complaint is. That was just a couple of paragraphs, right? So that resulted in a $1.9 million settlement. The school knew that it didn't protect, and it settled. Let's move on to the criminal case, and I'm going to say with a big star. Cody Barlow was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. In the criminal case involved in this, the jury deliberated only 2 hours, and at least one known victim is missing from this criminal case. Let me read the assistant district attorney in Seminole County. Her name is Tara Portillo. And this is what she said after the verdict. We're irretrievably devastated. She said the victims are beyond devastated. She said, I think this sends a message to people that ask questions, why do sex offenders get probation? This is why, because the word of 3 children that this man abused them was not enough in a court of law. So he walks free and out the doors, basically what she says. So I want you to remember this assistant district attorney, Tara Portillo, who was unsuccessful in getting a criminal conviction, even after the civil suit paid out nearly $2 million. She has now been moved to help within a case in Wetumka of Brent McGee. She is now, through a motion of the court, been brought over to assist the assistant district attorney in Hughes County with a very, very similar case against Brent McGee in Wetumka. Just to keep that in mind, I find that interesting.
So I just wanted to say something really fast. If you
Yep.
saw our interview with Kendra Weston, she said something that I clipped it because it was it was so profound. She said, "Why is it that today we will give kids what do you want? We'll give it to you. You know, you can do this, you can do that, you can have sex, you can do whatever you want. I mean, we'll let them become adults in so many different ways. But then if they come forward and they say, hey, I was sexually molested by Cody Barlow, well, you're a child. What do you know? And she's like, how confusing can it be to be a young person in today's society? Because on the one hand, they tell you that you're an adult and you can have sex with whoever you want, or read dirty books, or fill in the blank. But then on the other hand, if you come forward and say something, they'll just shut you down. Well, you're a kid. What do you know?
Well, it's interesting. I will tell you, I haven't dug deeply into the Wetumka Cody Barlow case. These courts are not very transparent. They don't upload much. There are things missing. It's hard to say at this point.
Imagine that.
What was different, but I can say there's a drastically different outcome between the civil case, which was in U.S. court and got it out of District 22, out of the local town, out of the conflicts of interest, and the criminal case that stayed in Seminole County. And that brings us to the Wetumka case. Very much a similar pattern is developing here. They lose documents. I see people commenting about that, about local courts. That is a big topic. We could do hours on local courts and non-transparency and their lack of adherence to open records requests. Even I've seen them take down entire cases, wipe them out of the system when they haven't been expunged. It is a huge, huge problem. We have no accountability. So, okay, let's go to Wetumka. Now, we've been covering it. Just put up a 7th article on this. And the fight to get to where we are from survivors has been just blockades at every step. So I want to congratulate every one of those warriors that's fought through this. But Brent McGee, Wetumka is in northern Hughes County. He is the former mayor, just to remind you about the relationships and the power that he holds in the community. Former mayor over a decade. And again, be aware that mayors hire and fire police chiefs. They have relationships with law enforcement. He was the Wetumka Public Schools alternative education head in his own building, away from everyone on the campus, athletic director, multi-sport coach. His boss was his spouse for many years, Donna McGee, who was the superintendent of the district. So I am going to share my screen and walk through this article with you. Okay, are you all seeing that? No.
No, what are we doing?
There you go, right there. You're awesome. Thank you so much. So this article just came out this month, and we talked a little bit about who Brent McGee is. There's actually one of the big things about this case that makes it a bit different is that there was a recording by Casey Yoakum, who accused Brent McGee of abusing him back in Noble. He was on your program. Right. Victims here range between reporting victims range between adolescence, teenagehood, and 50s for this particular person. And there's an audio recording that's in many of the articles where Casey Yoakum is speaking as an adult to Brent McGee, and Brent McGee admits to the abuse of him back then. So just giving that a little bit of a... So let me take you through a little bit. There was a civil case that was filed in this particular instance. 2 weeks prior to his arrest, there was a civil suit filed in Eastern Court again. So that suit is outside of the local community, which is a good thing. 2 19-year-old boys, Brandon Reinhart and Zachary Williams at the time, filed this suit. The reason they filed this suit, and I've spoken to both, is in the absence of criminal justice.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. But the case had been with the local DA for over 8 months and nothing was happening. And one of them, their birth date was coming up. And after the age of 20, because of our statutes, they cannot file. And this was their only option for justice. So you can read that whole complaint here. Their lawyer is a woman by the name of Lori Kohler. It's a very complete complaint. It's a very good read. So despite multiple other men having disclosed sexual abuse to McGee during their youth to law enforcement as part of the criminal case, only Reinhart and Williams were within the statute of limitations. So they're fighting the civil suit on their own. Okay, so let's fast forward.
Steph says delay, biggest trick in the courts.
It is.
I know that. I've got a federal judge who hasn't heard my case from October in my firing in the election board.
It truly is. That's a great comment. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is the loss of evidence during that time. So on August 9th of 22, 4 FBI agents showed up to the district, told him he had to step down. We started writing articles and we told the story. Visit told the story of Casey Yoakum, and he spoke before the board, and the Oklahoma State Board of Education, and they suspended McGee's certification so he could no longer teach. Donna McGee retired this last May. So it seems like justice is being done. The man's been arrested. There's a civil suit going. His wife has stepped down from the district, and it seems like justice. But when you really dig into what's happening in the criminal case, it really is not so. So early on, a number of agencies in this criminal case, including the OSBI, Muskogee Creek area, Light Force Police, were coordinating with those FBI agents that had the original recording from Casey Yoakum and were investigating child abuse at the hands of Brent McGee. So there was a lot of confusion right after the Supreme Court case with McGirt, and the FBI made the decision to turn the entire case investigation over to Hughes County Sheriff Marsha Maxwell. So she took over the case. And
hold on, can I ask you a question? Because I read this, and there were a couple of things I was just flummoxed about because I could not understand. Why did they turn the case over in the first place?
Well, if you go back to McGirt, and right after the McGirt decision, there were 22 suits that were filed, countersuits that were filed by then Attorney General John O'Connor. And they were trying to clarify what McGirt really meant. And there was the whole argument over, okay, is it when the perpetrator, the crime breaker, is of tribal heritage, that then only the federal government and the tribe can prosecute? Is it, they were saying, the tribe was saying, even if it's a victim who has a drop of tribal blood, that the state has no jurisdiction. So in that fallout, it was decided that if McGee was not tribal, then the local jurisdiction, the state, had to take it back.
Okay.
But now
that clears that up. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So it landed in the hands of Marsha Maxwell. Now, Marsha Maxwell, she's a local. She grew up in the area. Previously was a nurse by profession and was elected in 2014 as the sheriff there. Her husband is also in law enforcement. And you can see in this picture here, she's over to the far left. They have a personal relationship with the McGee family. So there are some serious conflicts of interest here.
Wow.
Locals even report that McGee's brother was part of Maxwell's own wedding party. So this isn't just a small conflict of interest that they live in the same town. This is a big conflict of interest. I personally attempted to talk with Marsha Maxwell on several occasions over the last couple of years that we've been following this. And she refused to answer questions. And when I actually got her on the phone once, which I believe was maybe by accident on her part, she hung up on me. So,
golly. And Steph has a question there also, Mary. Drummond dropped that, can't find that information. I mean, where's he? Is he not involved in this at all?
No, nope. Have heard nothing from the AG Drummond about this at all. So there was a lot of heat about this. This wouldn't go away. The community became very aware of what was going on. And you find out that it's the worst kept secret in Wetumka, that there was abuse going on at the hands of McGee. And the public pressure, Marsha Maxwell chose to retire early in 2024 and did not seek re-election. So the good news is that Hughes County has a new sheriff, and it appears that that's going well. The bad news is that the new sheriff came in after Marsha Maxwell had already turned this case over to the DA. Okay. And that was in December of 2023. So investigation supposedly done. What we found out was during Marsha Maxwell's criminal investigation of McGee that no warrant was ever requested to search McGee's residence, which at least 5 of the reporting victims say was the primary place of their abuse. The McGees moved underprivileged kids into their house repeatedly, bought them cars, met their needs, groomed them in every single way. And that was the primary site of abuse. Never been searched. The family business, which is the local Dairy Queen, which is one of the only places teenagers can work. We have a victim who talks about abuse related to that location. The Wetumka Public Schools Alternative Education Building, his office, where he had daily unsupervised access to students. There's no evidence that they were ever searched. So the case gets turned over by Maxwell in December of 2023. DA Eric Johnson, and the case is assigned to Chief Investigator Doug Parker, who I was able to talk to once in the past. We cannot locate any request on their behalf to search any physical location. So, and this is a post by the DA congratulating the investigator, Doug Parker, who's in charge of the investigation for District 22, getting an award. And you know how I feel about awards and public officials.
They
So
give them
even
to
the
people who are doing the wrong things to take your mind off of it.
Correct.
What were you going to say, Michael?
Well, I was going to say, even when the FBI had the case in the beginning, they still didn't search anything.
Nope. No, they actually 4 FBI agents went to the school, and I believe that this was in a move to protect children immediately. And they met with Donna McGee. They interviewed Brent McGee. They met with Daryl Reed, who is still the high school principal. And they demanded that he step down from all roles. We know that he still had access to the campus after that. And they did not search. There was no search at that time. And of course, I mean, you're a town the size of Wetumka, which is tiny. Everyone in town knew that the FBI came. Every teacher, everyone. There was no school board order to investigate, to find other possible victims. There was no action on behalf of the school.
This is like mind blowing. What was the time frame though of the turnover from the FBI to the sheriff? Was that pretty quick turnaround or something?
No, it was months. And I
so there's no excuse. They could have easily gone in and investigated everything before the turnover itself.
Yeah, but let's flip that over. They could have easily gone in and trashed a bunch of evidence while all of this, Three Stooges garbage was going on.
Certainly. And I will tell you, I believe that if not for the actions of Casey Yoakum, who was relentless in his contact with every single law enforcement agency from the FBI, he wanted constant updates. If he had not, I'm not sure that case ever would have been turned over, if there ever would have been progress on that case. God. And, my investigation came in much later than that. So I give a lot of credit to his tenacity.
And I agree with Dana. I mean, I think a bunch of this is it's dog and pony show, because if you really cared about kids, if you really cared about adults that were doing bad things to kids, you would do something about it.
Correct. Because to say for the FBI
Oh
that he just needs to step down from the school and then he just immediately went to his Dairy Queen where he's employing the same kids, and there was nothing saying that he couldn't still take kids into his home, is pointless.
Yeah.
It was a pointless exercise. Yes. So, as you were saying, in the absence of any search by law enforcement, locals in Wetumka have provided this publication with pictures that immediately after McGee's arrest, finally, in August of 2024, late August, he was arrested. In early September, dumpsters started showing up at the McGee home. And you can see here in early September, there's a small dumpster at the McGee home. That is filled and taken away. And then in late September, I was sent photographs of a large dumpster, and you can see that it is full to the top.
Well, they were just doing spring cleaning. I mean, come on. I usually do that. Get a couple of dumpsters.
I can't say what was in the dumpsters, but I can say that the potential for lost evidence is clearly there. Now, the McGee home was never listed for sale. They didn't put their home up, cleared out to put up for sale. And now another source of evidence in this case has been sidelined. So for months, Brent McGee, 5 months now, has refused to provide the passcode to his cell phone that was taken into evidence when he was arrested in August at his Dairy Queen.
So let me just mention something. So Ashley Rowland is on, and she said she found us on Rumble. I mean, two thumbs up for that, Ashley. Sadly, I don't think they rush to truly investigate because they're not interested in the truth. Only self-preservation of the school districts. I don't see how she's not 100% accurate there.
She knows personally. She fought for years related to the coaches of Little Axe, who then spread around the state. One of them being her perpetrator when she was a student. So she fought very hard and wasn't listened to for a long, long time. So back to the cell phone. Prosecutors requested to the court to have access to a warrant for all stored communications on the phone. They wanted third-party applications, photographs, video recordings, internet-based communications under his name or other aliases or nicknames known to him. And I will tell you, a very simple public records request suggests that he had a lot of phone numbers, as many as 9 email addresses associated with him. And they include sexually suggestive names for email addresses like WoodyYL at yahoo.com and CallousGuy1979 at Comcast.net. So there is a wealth of evidence that may be sitting on that phone. Now, the delay of 5 months in not accessing that phone could very well run the risk that that evidence is being accessed through those applications on other devices, deleted, destroyed, that kind of a thing. Okay.
Right.
So after months of delay, just prior to a scheduled hearing in November, just a couple of days before a hearing on the case, McGee's attorney, the criminal defense attorney is Shannon McMurray, filed a motion for discovery master. And she was asking for, because she knew that hearing's coming up, that the assistant district attorney is going to bring this to the court's attention because they still can't get into the phone. She wanted a discovery master. She claimed that there was attorney-client privileged communications on the phone, which is why they would not give over the passcode. And she wanted a third party to review all of it. That was the only way they were going to give over this code, if they could review all of it and then release what was appropriate to the assistant district attorney. So this has gone on, just another delay in the criminal case. Assistant District Attorney Blaine Norman at the November 19th hearing asked for McGee to be found in contempt of court and his bond revoked for failing to give his phone passcode as ordered. But Tricia Deanne Smith, who is the district judge on this case right now, who also grew up in Hughes County, denied that request. At a subsequent hearing that just happened on January 9th, it was decided that Judge Smith would be reviewing the cell phone's contents and decide what the prosecution could have and couldn't have. There was no timing related to that. Yet another hearing was set up, and that's where we sit with 5 months of this cell phone not being made available, the contents not being available. So I'm not sure where that goes, and I'm not sure what's being lost, and no one else is either, but it looks like observably decisions in the court are landing in favor of the defendant.
But hold on. To me, it just looks like these people aren't doing their jobs at all. It's like they don't even know what their jobs are.
It's really difficult to say. And I'm sure that there are multiple variables working in here. Is it because the caseloads are so big on these assistant district attorneys in this 3-county area? Is it because oftentimes what you see in these criminal cases is you have a very experienced and skilled criminal defense attorney going up against assistant district attorneys who are typically prosecutors that go to these smaller counties to begin their career, to build a resume. So it's a bit of an unfair fight as far as victims are concerned. And remember, the victims are not the plaintiffs in this. This is the state against Brent McGee. So thankfully, attorney Lori Kohler, who's representing the 2 teenagers who filed the civil suit, has made a motion to intervene in this case. So she may be the only one that's really speaking for the victims in this. Now, she's not technically a direct party to the case, but they are allowed now to be there, to be at hearings, and to have a say. And there's Casey Yoakum in our comments.
Yeah, I'm not quite understanding what you're saying though, Casey. 4 survivors have been a part of digital.
Well, I think a part, like there was digital communication or digital pictures, or I think that's what he's saying.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes, there are multiple victims who know that there was evidence on this phone because they communicated with McGee and they know what the evidence is. Yeah, so this is not an if those pictures exist. They do exist, or they did exist, and now they may not be part of the criminal case. So you see, as you're watching the actions of the court, you're starting to see how you could have a different civil and criminal outcome in Wetumka, and how there has to be pressure on every step of the process for people to, as you said, Jenny, do their jobs. Now, I want to talk a little bit about his bond, because this has been a source of questions from the very beginning. So the day after McGee was arrested in August, the assistant district attorney recommended a $1 million bond, and it was reduced to $250,000 bond based on this list of character witnesses that was presented to the court by McGee. Okay. Now, there's no court record of this list of witnesses, but it was read out loud. And McGee did, through an attorney, say to the court that all of the people on this list had contacted his wife, Donna McGee, within the previous 24 hours and agreed to be character witnesses as to McGee's reputation in the community. Now, that was the basis for the lowered bond. What we know is that following the hearing, there was no verification in court. They didn't ask anyone to stand up. They didn't ask anyone to testify to the fact that they were a character witness and talk about McGee. It was just a list of names read out loud.
So this list could have come from a phone book.
It could have. There was no verification of anything. Now, one of the people on the list was in the court, and he was sitting next to Donna McGee at the time. He was sitting in the hearing. His name is Donald Williamson. He's a longtime Wetumka Board of Education member. He owns a local funeral home We've written about him in the past. I tried to contact him at the beginning to talk to him about the school board, what decisions had been made, what they were aware of, how they were handling the FBI accusations. He refused to talk, would not answer any requests for comment. Also part of a gospel singing group that I'm told is semi-famous. He approached both Casey Yoakum, who is on here today and can attest to this, and another accuser, Justin Coate, after the hearing and informed them that he had never given his permission to be a character witness and that he was only accompanying Donna McGee to the hearing as her pastor. So we do know, and there are other witnesses that since have talked to accusers and told them they did not give permission, as McGee's attorney stated in court that they had. So now we have a bond that is 25% of what was recommended by prosecutors based on what appears to be inaccuracies told to the court. Now, Williamson, just as a note, was indicted for felony embezzlement related to his funeral home back in 2015, 28 families for prepaid services. That was worked out somehow, and he was then returned the funds to where they should be. But his lack of, as a elected representative of the school board, the lack of transparency and the refusal of anyone on the school board to talk to media about the entire situation is really concerning.
But he's in a gospel group.
Correct.
But there's that.
And again, reputation in the community is everything. It's protection. So another aspect of McGee's bond is that McGee claimed in court at the same time that they claimed poverty, first of all. And I'm going to tell you, she was the superintendent. When she left her position, she was making a package of over $140,000 a year. He had multiple roles, and you have all the extra duty pay and those things. So at one time, they were regular bringing in about $200,000 a year. And in Wetumka, they also own a business in Wetumka. They claimed poverty, and it was based on the amount of cash that they had in the bank. We do not know if that was verified by the court. Said that they could not pay the required $25,000 or 10% bond associated because of financial hardship. And then they also claimed that they couldn't put up their personal residence or the Dairy Queen because those were not in their names, that they didn't actually own them, that they were in his mother's name. And the house that they have lived in for many years was lived in, that's McGee's family home. It was his parents' home. So county records do show that the Dairy Queen is owned by an incorporation, McGee Dairy Queen Incorporated. But it also, county records do show that their physical residence that they said they did not own was deeded over to Brent and Donna McGee in 2004 at a sale price of $84,000. So the parents deeded it over to the accused and his wife in 2004. They informed the court otherwise. And that was part of their claim of poverty and not being able to pay the $25,000.
So I'm just curious, because the more you talk about this, the more, I'm at this point, I'm gnashing my teeth to keep from anyway, aren't defense attorneys bound by some kind of law or at least ethics to make sure that what their client says is true?
One would assume. What I can say is what was presented to the court related to the ownership of this residence, and I've actually blacked out, you can't even see the section and everything. We're not here to be doxing anybody. This is just about a statement made to the court that is inaccurate. Not only was it signed over in 2004, but then they immediately did another correction to the warranty deed, and it is most definitely in the name, that home, of Brent and Donna McGee. They mortgaged the home several times since then. So it's actually been a source of funding for them, which they would not have been able to do had they not held ownership.
Is the court that inept that they can't just go for 1 minute and go check something themselves?
Well, what I would say is my fear is that this is an example of rural corruption in the court system that favors rural elite. And I've talked to so many people from other communities that experience the same thing. That's the question. Is it corruption or is it ineptness? I can't answer that question.
Well, and real quick on the subject of the court, I mean, ultimately, like, go back to the FBI and the search and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, a court at some point would have to authorize that first, correct?
Correct.
I mean, the FBI just can't go in and search. So has the court been holding this thing? You know, I wonder if the FBI asked for a search or if someone asked for a search and the court never would grant.
There's no record visible. I mean, you're going to see a line in OSCN that says request for warrant. Sometimes you will see a PDF that's attached to that and you can see the details, but most times you'll see there's a request for a warrant. And there's no evidence of that. I can find no evidence that anyone has ever asked to search that property.
I mean, that is unbelievable. I mean, it's just doesn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't. And when you're thinking about when you're thinking about how our local courts operate in criminal prosecutions, there's almost always a plea deal. And are they playing the game, trying to keep their heads above water with too many cases, where they're looking for just enough evidence to force a plea deal? I don't know. Or is this protectionism? Is this protectionism of a perpetrator? I cannot answer that question. I can only tell you what's happening. So
Ashley says, such absurdity. If protecting children was the ultimate objective, none of this would continue to perpetuate.
Yeah, 100%.
Nothing makes sense because it isn't logical and it isn't in search for the truth. And that's correct. I mean, she's 150% right this time. I mean, it simply isn't logical. It doesn't portend with the law at all.
And Casey Yoakum just made a great point. This is 100% the reason why court hearings must be moved out of the district, particularly in these cases with public ed pedophiles. We've got to get them out of there. Too many people, he says, too many people are covering up for him and themselves. So you do get into a situation where there's a certain culture of crime that has taken over an area. Yeah. And people in power are covering that. Casey, I agree with you. So let me talk a little bit about Hughes County Court Clerk Ashley Sanford's office. So Ashley Sanford's office released this appearance bond. So this is the stipulation of the bond when Brent McGee was bonded out. So we know what's going on here, okay? So it does say that it's $250,000. So it's 25% of what was recommended. And then they had their claim of poverty. They had their claim that they didn't actually own the property. And then Donna McGee is the one who bailed him out. But look at the amount down in the corner that they actually paid. For Pete's
sakes.
Before they released it, it was covered by a paper. An inside source informs that Donna McGee paid only $17,000 for her husband's release. But why, as the public that this court is supposed to be protecting, do we not get to know what they actually paid and that there was a further reduction? The only stipulation of his bond is that he's not supposed to have contact with minors.
We need to send in an open records request to get that actual document.
Yes. And I'm telling you, there's some very active citizens there who are doing a lot of this work. They want to know. They're tired of their town and their children being harmed. And they are making these requests. So it takes a lot of bravery to do that when the people in your town that hold power can really harm you. And I have an upcoming story about this same town that will show you just how far they will go to harm a family and cover up what they've done to that family's child. That's coming. Okay, so that's where we end right now in the criminal case against Brent McGee. Again, if you want to, where we've placed in this article what's really most fascinating, and it's something you can read on your own, is if you want to download, this is the civil complaint that's filed in federal court, as Casey was saying. This is the part of it that got out of this town and will have a much more impartial trial. The civil complaint is loaded with evidence, with victim statements, with a clear picture of what happened to these two boys. We're just not seeing that yet. And the criminal case is dragging on and on.
Everybody's always afraid of my blood pressure. But I don't know why everybody else doesn't get this hot under the collar and want to blow a gasket over this kind of stuff, because we pay these people's salaries. I mean, this is taxpayer stuff here. Your county property taxes go to pay for these people who are not protecting your children. How there aren't pitchforks and torches and I don't know what else going on in that town. I cannot figure it out. But here's the other thing too, though. Mary, think about how many times you are the only person who has reported on any of this court crap.
That's what I was getting ready to say, Jenny, is where's Channel 9? Where's Channel 5? Where's Channel 4? Come on, where's Fox? I mean, give me a break. Where's the local news? Local newspapers? Where's the Oklahoman? Come on.
Well, I think what you're highlighting, the critical piece that has left our rural communities so incredibly unsafe, is that the local media and local papers were strong. That was the guy you did not want to run into at the coffee shop because he was up into everything. They're gone. They've all been bought out by Gannett and others. They're all being run out of the DC area. If you go look at all of the roll papers, which are basically online now, their format is exactly identically the same because they're all owned by the same place. And none of them will dig in to the place where they live. To me, that is the missing piece in this. Someone has to come from the outside, and people have to be brave enough to go find somebody that will cover it from the outside to get anything done. That has got to change.
But here's my question, because Ashley said, I wish everyone got as upset as you do, Jenny. Well, but here's the thing, Ashley, getting upset about it clearly isn't helping. There's got to be something. I mean, Mary, you're the biggest help because you've been bringing this stuff out into the sunlight. But for God's sakes, why is nothing? You talk about it. I get so frustrated because I don't know what you do.
So I would say what I've learned from following several of these cases very closely and tenaciously, you cannot let go at any step, is that the victims face barriers at every single step, from the initial disclosure, from dealing with the school, from the schools doing internal investigations and dismissing things, or letting someone resign and move on to another district. They are either not believed, or they are shunned, or they are persecuted when they come forward.
Oh, yeah. What was going on with Ashley's mother and how they treated her and Ashley? How does that not make somebody just so mad that their face gets red? I mean, that's.
Oh, just during Ashley's time in Little Axe, I've talked to multiple girls who they left. Their families left their lifelong district because they couldn't keep them safe there, and they couldn't live with the trauma and seeing their abuser every day. So Casey says, the reason the FBI showed up at the school on August 9th was because I was wiretapped with the FBI. Oh, we do need to talk about this, with audio and video recording devices. August 7th, I went to Wetumka and recorded Brent McGee again, and he went further into detail about his molestation. 2 days later is when the FBI showed up at the school. So there's the first recording, and we do talk about that a little in the article, but this is a great point, Casey. There's so much evidence in this case. Casey recorded this man for hours the first time. He tried to get something done with it. He went to law enforcement, ended up with the FBI. The FBI wired him completely for a high quality recording. He went back and had a several hour conversation with Brent McGee again. This time he added to the confession. He talked about not just Casey, but other students that he had molested. There was all kinds of detail in that recording. We don't have that recording yet. We have Casey telling us what happened in that recording, but that recording is in the hands of prosecutors now. It's in the hands of District 22 DA Eric Johnson and the investigator Doug Parker. So that recording, we cannot stop saying that it exists because it's an irrefutable piece of evidence in this case, and we cannot let it get lost. And that's the fear here, that evidence is going to be lost and that they will walk into what they always do in a much lowered plea deal, and that this man will be back out on the streets.
So Ashley made a really good point, and I wanted to put it up. I mean, I'm just having to read it off of Rumble, but I wanted to actually get it into the video. And this really, honestly, is the bottom line. And Michael, you've talked about it 100 times. Good grief, Mary, you've written about it 1,000,000 times. This is the bottom line. The media is worried about ruining a teacher's life rather than the amounts of children's lives that are negatively impacted by these predators. And here's
correct.
And I've said this before, and I will say it again, because I have just a little bit of experience with this. I was informed by our town attorney one time that you have to be so careful with these things because you can generate a lawsuit. Well, kids can't generate a lawsuit, right? And how many of their parents are actually going to go, I'm going to go run all over the place and try to find an attorney, but I can't afford one, because I'm having to pay for the school that's molesting my kid. And I'm also now having to pay for an attorney out of my pocket. This is even so gross when you put it together, because they're scared of people like Brent McGee who would turn around and file a lawsuit against them for dismissal. They're scared of that, but they're not scared of these kids, because how many of those parents are going to be able to have the money to sue them? That's what it's about. They don't care about children. There's no care about children here. And I'm not saying every person involved with public school, but it has to be the majority at this point, or you wouldn't have this stuff happening.
It's interesting. Stephanie just posted. Steph the Invisible posted, when you go against the school, they will call DHS on you over and over. And Steph, there's a wave brewing in Oklahoma. Transparency is coming for DHS. And now we have DHS has contracted with school systems to have a DHS worker inside many schools.
Yeah, now, we had Dana Mooney on to talk about that, because she's very concerned about that.
It's just another layer of government that is protecting itself and keeping these things silenced. The court system, juvenile deprived court, we have guardian ad litems in the mix. We have CASAs, which are court-appointed special advocates, in the mix. There's a lot of people that make their living off of vulnerable children in this state. And to say that it's not going well in the system makes you a target. I agree with that.
Yeah, but here's what Roberta says, and this is absolutely, because Roberta was on with Dana. We'll throw billions into the mental health toll it takes on these kids. And that's the other thing. I mean, there's another bunch of bills going up about how many counselors we're going to have in schools anymore. So we're willing to pay these counselors, and they're supposed to be there on the campus. But by God, if a kid comes along and says, I'm getting molested by so-and-so.
Right. If you really stop and think about the progression that a case must take from when a child discloses abuse to, say, a parent at the hands of someone in government, like a public school, and an actual conviction where that person goes to jail. there are dozens of points of responsibility where that can be derailed. And the public pressure has to stay on at every single point to ensure that that next public official is doing their job with fidelity, or it doesn't happen. That is what I've learned from this.
I'm not saying he's going to do anything about it, but he is running for governor, which is the best time to get anybody doing anything is when they're running for an office. Mm-hmm. Is there no way to get somehow in front of the AG's office to be, because they are, over DAs. I mean, county DAs, there is a jurisdiction there. Is there no way to get in front of this man and tell him to make these people do their stinking jobs?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because if I was going to look at two different cases and sort of the juxtaposition of what's happening under this AG and the previous AG, if you go back to Shawnee, there was a similar level of corruption and, conflicts of interest all over the small town. Shawnee's not that small, but they certainly had that going on, where there were conflicts of interest in every agency involved, including the public schools. So at the time, John O'Connor was Oklahoma's AG, and he came in and pulled that case. And he put that case in Cleveland County related to Ron Arthur, who's the basketball coach, who molested. He's now in prison for molesting boys. So he pulled that case and he put it to Cleveland County until another district attorney was put in place in Shawnee, and then the case returned. So they absolutely have the power to move these cases out from under conflicts of interest. I have not seen that happen with Attorney General Drummond yet in a case involving children in public school. But I think it should. I think there should be a new standard where these cases and other kinds of cases that don't get justice in rural courts have an option to move out.
I've done this before. I mean, Julie and I did this when we were doing Common Core. We would just go to town halls where, like, for example, Mary Fallon was going to be, and ask her a bunch of questions about Common Core. I think that's what we're going to have to do with the AG. I think we just go to every single one of these things. I think this is now where the activism plays in. So we've got almost 100 people on here today live. Listen. What we got to do is every time he goes out to run his mouth about how he's running for governor, we need to be at those forums saying, excuse me, Mr. AG, what about this case? Why aren't you are you going to tell us, are you going to give us our assurance that these cases are going to get taken care of? Are you going to protect children? I say that that's what we do. We just absolutely follow this man around and just completely
and film it. We need to film it. Yeah, we need to film it and put it on out in the open. Show the response.
And I think that's what we're going to have to do. I mean, you go when he has got a town hall. I'll try to stay on him, Michael. Let's try to make sure we find his town halls. We'll announce them. Everybody who's close will go and we'll just stand there and go, excuse me, Earl's daughter's in. Shelley Rogers is in. Let's get her done, people, everywhere he goes. And you just raise that hand up and you go, excuse me, Mr. AG, are you going to give us your assurances that you're going to protect children in the state of Oklahoma, including moving the cases that aren't being adjudicated properly? I think that's what we're going to have to do. And this is my challenge to you. Almost 100 people out there. You go tell all of your friends, and everywhere he goes, we'll just stand there and do this until something gets done.
Yeah.
Gosh dang it, I'm mad.
I agree. Observably, only the grassroots can change these things. Only the grassroots can get it done.
Oh, and that's another good one. Get him on social media, Steph says. That's true. When he starts yapping about what all he's done, put a comment underneath there that says, and how are you protecting children in the state? What about Wetumka? What about, and just start putting these things in.
Well,
Mary,
that's why bothers me.
That's why we got to get him while he's running. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, Julia made a comment earlier about the government mafia, but Mary, what bothers me to no end is you can never say a bad word about a teacher. Otherwise you're a bad guy. And we know that the predators are going to be where the kids are. They're going to be teachers. They're going to be working for these school districts. But all these teachers that profess, they love kids, they love to help and do all that. Where are all these other people in Wetumka? Where are other teachers coming out and backing these boys up? Where are the school board members? Where's the admins? Where's the superintendent? I mean, give me a break. Where are these people?
And I hope everybody is going to those Wetumka public school meetings, the board meetings. I hope you get 40 people there at every single one, and you just sit there and just hammer these people constantly. And that's nothing we can help you with. That has to be in your own towns. You just absolutely have got to do that. Nobody else can do that for you. I mean, how many times have we said that, Michael?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this about the Wetumka Public Schools Board of Education. When the FBI came and demanded that Brent McGee step down, and remember again, his boss, the superintendent, is his wife, the principal, I interviewed someone who happened to be in a teachers meeting where they were all brought together and told that they needed to really take care of Donna McGee. This was going to be very hard on her. They said nothing about any other potential victims in the school. They said nothing about helping children. And then, because he was forced to step down and was no longer getting a salary, something interesting happened. They renewed Donna McGee's contract, the Board of Education did, and they gave her a substantial raise from a $128,000 package to over $140,000 package. So you tell me what they're concerned about on the Wetumka School Board. They're concerned about paying and protecting each other.
They all need to go to prison, all of them. They all need to be in jail, all of them.
Bing, 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 bing.
Not one of them is willing to talk about any decision or discussion. There is nothing within school board limits. You mean 4 FBI agents came into tiny Wetumka?
No.
And they didn't even talk about it at the school board meeting?
No.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe they're keeping falsified records for the school board. They're not recording what they're talking about, and they are extremely culpable in this. That gentleman who sat next to her at the meeting is still a school board member.
I'm telling you,
the positive thing here is it can be changed. It's just there's been no light on this subject specifically in these towns.
Yeah, this would be the most exemplar case to just drop the hammer across the board and say it's not going to happen anymore, period. If you're going to have admins and other people that are complicit in covering this thing up, you're all going down. Every single one of them, your school board members, you're all going down. I mean, there's no better place to do it, to just set the precedent right here, right now. This case, they all go down. That's what we need.
Well, and that's what Julia says. A couple of superintendents going to jail would stop it. And that's absolutely the fact. If they believed that they were culpable for this and people would hold them culpable, it would stop.
Yeah. It only happens because they're all untouchable. They're all untouchable.
Well, and here's the problem, and it all ends up in that top-down scheme, because Roberta, I think, talked about this exact same thing when we had she and Dana on the other day. So let's say that it's your kid, and and Ashley said this when she was on and did her interview with us. She said this very same thing. So your kid has the problem, so then you go to the school board and you tell them that your kid has this problem, and then everybody turns on you and your kid, and then all of a sudden you're the problem and not the other person. And it's all because of this school culture. And the only way to stop that is for people to get together, and there's got to be enough people in these towns that are just sick to death of this crap, and get enough people together where you just go up there and if you have to bust in on executive sessions, if you have to do whatever you have to do to make this stop, you're gonna have to do it. I mean,
yeah. Well, okay, but Capitalist Sooner made the best comment. They have to be personally liable. They can't be shielded behind some BS, or they're acting within their position or whatever. They need to be personally liable. They need to go to jail personally because they knew, they covered it up, or they knew about past incidents and they let it go in one way or another. If anyone that has any knowledge or didn't come forward in any capacity needs to go to jail.
And see, Casey says the ones who need to go to jail are all the teachers covering for McGee's.
Yeah.
They have a duty to report and they're not reporting.
Yeah,
and if
100%.
you put some of those teachers in jail, even if it was for 30 days for not following the law, which is their duty to report, again, man, I'm telling you.
Well, you can't tell us that this just happened with Brent and nobody knew. It was just him and his wife covering it up. You can't say that. You know that a ton of people there knew, and they all let it happen over a long period of time to a lot of kids.
Yeah, and like John says, it's the law. You have to report. And I think, John, weren't you on a school board or something? You're a teacher, so he knows. But Kelly said, amen. The teachers all fear the retaliation, and the school board does what the superintendent wants to have them do, which we've talked about over and over and over again. I mean, but again, the community is in charge of the school board. They're the ones that have charge of that. You guys have to be so careful. You guys have to get people to go out and run. You guys have to make huge stinks about what's going on. Oh, Ashley said something else. Look at what's happening with the superintendent of Shawnee. They had an opportunity to send a message, and the message they chose was to support the perpetrator and not the survivors coming forward. So, I mean, Steph says, so maybe we need to cross travel to these meetings like they do for the green event. I mean, and that may be, something too, but I do think, and Dorn, or
get a new member elected on the school board that's going to go back and just hammer. I mean, absolutely just blow the whistle and hammer the whole deal. That's what you need. If you can't stop them up front, get a new school board member elected and go right in, because the school board member is the end all be all to what happens in that district. And I'd go in there, I'd say, hey, I want to know everything that possibly happened, what the school knew, when, where, and just hammer them on it.
Well, and like Julia says, we tried to get better training for the school boards in 2022, but that bill was killed by our Oklahoma Senate. While the OSSBA members stood up there watching down at everybody, and the Senate caved and wouldn't, pass it. I mean, Roberta says the citizens are in charge of an elected school board. The school board has the responsibility to hold the superintendent accountable, and that she's 100% correct. But that's not what OSSBA tells everybody. Everybody says, that it's the superintendent that's in charge, and that's what's created this whole mess where nobody knows what their duties actually are on a school board. But then it's also, I mean, Michael, you've said this so many times before about the people who run for school board. They do it so often just to get it on their resume or so they can be a part of the community. They don't go in with the fire in their belly that so many of you people who are commenting on here this morning have, which is protect the kids.
Yeah.
You're paid by my money to protect these kids.
Yeah. Well, and besides just the accolade of, school board member, whatever, a lot of these school board people are literally groomed. Their parents that want to help, want to be involved in the school. They get in there, they get within the culture. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, why don't you be a school board member? This seat's going to be coming up in a year or 2 years or whatever. I mean, they literally groom the people, write it, and just say, hey, you can help us out so much more. I mean, that's another just major avenue.
The school board only approves of like-minded members.
100%.
Well said. And I think we have to sometimes back up, and school board members, people who have the responsibility, school administrators, to keep people safe, to keep kids safe, and think like the predator. there is a reason they go after the most vulnerable child. They go after the child of people who don't have the resources to fight back. And that's how this is perpetuated. So the people in these towns that need to step up are not the ones who've been harmed and crushed by it. It's everyone else that needs to step up, because those people are being silenced from the beginning. And when we start to look at incentives that they give people to stay quiet, just in Wetumka, there's some pretty serious evidence that they were using the emergency and alternative certified routes to becoming a teacher to hire people who were non-certified in the traditional sense over those who are certified teachers. And once you take someone in a town like Wetumka and you give them one of the best jobs in town that they're not even qualified for, and then maybe give their spouse also a teaching job, which is something they never studied to do, are you really going to bite back at them when an investigation comes? Are you really going to out them? Are you really going to dig? Are you going to be looking for instances with those kids to prove that your new boss, or your boss's husband in this case, is doing horrible things to kids? And we see a lot of evidence of that in Wetumka. When you look at who the staff is, they're groomed with the offer of positions. There's some evidence that district credit cards were used for things that they shouldn't have been used for. You'll never get those records, but that's the report. People are sort of bought. And if you give them something that helps them sort of stay afloat, are they really going to speak up when an accusation comes forward?
Well, and I got to point out that both Julia and Dorn have made some really significant comments that I think would work here. So all of us know that butts and seats are what fuels the money that fuels this public school to allow them to continue to hurt these children.
Right.
The best thing that you could possibly do is to get as many kids as you possibly can to walk out of that school, whichever school it is that's causing the problem.
Right.
Walk out of that school and just don't show up for a week or 2 weeks. You don't think they're going to try to do something at that point? They want their money more than they care about the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that would sure go a whole long way to making those people turn around, is if you just decided, I'm not going to put my kids in there. I'll just take them out.
Correct. And I have to say, Wetumka Schools has a new superintendent. I do not have information about that. Like Casey said, you have to be very careful because school boards like this don't hire someone who's not like-minded with them. He said it very, very well. There are other staff and personnel of concern, because when you have from the top like this, someone accused of these things, typically there's been a culture of abuse that was created in that school. And there's already some evidence of that. Is that still present? There's so many questions. Just because this one perpetrator is no longer in this one school and now he's in the criminal system, albeit a conflicted criminal system, you can't let go of that school. The problem is not solved.
I hope you don't mind. I pulled this over in case some of the people who are watching today don't know where to find you. I want to make sure that they know how to find you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we've talked about a lot of layers in this. How many layers are working against survivors of abuse or current victims of abuse in schools? It's daunting, but it needs to change. Light is the anesthetic.
Well, Shelley says then the truancy officers come after you and put you in Hughes County. And I'm not saying that that's not true, but I'm saying it would be pretty hard if you had 25 or 30 kids or more. It'd be pretty hard for them to come after all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Nepotism, including the school board members. Tammy's right. I mean, that's
the biggest problem. Really, that's the biggest problem right there.
Absolutely, it is. And we've allowed that. That's in school law. That's in Title 70, that they are allowed in towns that have smaller populations. They are allowed to pull this stuff of Mrs. McGee gets to be superintendent and Brent McGee gets to be, on the a coach or whatever. And if you try to pull that, the rural schools scream and holler and say, but we can't, there are only a few people that we just can't do that. And I'm beginning to say, I don't care.
Right. So
I don't care.
what that law says is if you're under the 400 student mark in your district, that you get special exemptions from conflict of interest rules, which makes no sense. There should be no exceptions to conflict of interest rules. It's how we make kids unsafe. And it actually says that you can be on the board and a member of your family can hold a position within the district. So now you could have a wife or husband hiring a wife or husband to be
Yeah, and that's
superintendent at the
just
high.
flat crazy. And
It is.
that's got to be changed. I don't know if we've got a legislator watching or somebody who wants to contact their legislator and find out if they've got a shell bill that's got Title 70 in it, and we get that taken care of this year, where there just isn't any nepotism in schools, period. If mom is, if wife is employed, dad can't be, or if, whatever. I mean, it just has got to be stopped. All one has to do if they come after you for not sending your kids to school is tell them you're homeschooling and they can't do a thing. Good point, John. Well, I'm just homeschooling.
There you go.
There you go. I had said, and Julia had said this, years ago, that we need to get out of the state constitution compulsory education. Compulsory education should be removed from the state constitution. We should not have that in there. If a parent wants to send their kids to school, fine. If they don't, fine. Casey said, this is why students never come forward. No one believes you and you're looked down upon, trying to defame a coach. And that's the worst one, right, Casey? A coach, because all we care about is sports. Or a teacher. You're ousted. Your kid's looking at climbing a Mount Everest with no shoes in the dark and blindfolded. Yeah. And, I totally see that.
So I can tell you that I know that both Casey, Ashley, myself, becoming a safe place for people to come forward, have received in all of these cases, their respective cases, and in my case, both, communications from victims that are anonymous, that they just want to say it out loud. They won't allow us to use their information because they're so incredibly scared, because they still live in the community and they know the power of the community to crush them if they come forward. And it is honestly the most heartbreaking part of this. So they're all watching. They're watching in Wetumka to see if justice will be served. And it needs to be followed, and it needs to be public at every step of the process to ensure.
Well, and Julie makes a great point too. You need to tell that truant officer that there are predators in the school, and if you want your kid there, they better have a seat in the classroom for parents to attend.
Ooh, that's good.
I like that one. Way to go, Jules. Kelly says, Michael, we just did that, knowing that electing one board member at a time would change that corrupt dynamic. Last April election, we thought we got that first board member changed, but even that newly elected board member's already fallen into the mold, and they all just rubber stamp everything. Yeah, I don't know how they can claim they'll vote their convictions, but rubber stamp and school board votes are always 5-0, Kelly. Yeah, amen. We've seen that constantly.
I do know they put a ton of pressure on the school board members to vote, because I've had school board members come forward to me and say, look, I'm trying to ask some questions and buck the system, but literally everywhere I go outside of the district, when I'm just at a place of business or whatever, I've got someone coming up to me saying, hey, you're making the town look bad if you're saying no on this. It doesn't make it look like we're unified, or, whatever. So I do understand that, but still, we've got to keep getting people on there that have some backbone. And if you can get another person, maybe that will somewhat change. You got two now rather than just one. I know it's hard, but we can't give up on that. We got to keep going no matter what.
So what I would say about Kelly's comment is, you have to remember, every new school board member has to go through trainings.
Yeah. And they hammer that
to the Oklahoma State School Board Association, who trains them in specific areas that they have to cover. And then they believe that they are following the law. Now, the law does not say that when someone is accused of sexually abusing a student, that you as an administrator bring them in and question them about it and say, well, I have two choices here. You can step down and then we can no longer investigate, or we can investigate. That is not what the law says. The law says that administrator and anyone else who knows should be on the hotline to the DHS Child Abuse and Neglect hotline, and they should be calling law enforcement. So they are not appropriately training them. We have a huge union and education organization cabal that is taking that good person that you recruited as grassroots effort and put on the board, and they are misinforming them about their responsibilities and about the law.
Well, and Jenny, remember we had Elena Ashley on the show like 6-7 months later after she got the board seat over there in Tulsa. And what'd she tell us about the OSSBA? They literally told her, you do what the superintendent says. I mean, they literally told her that.
That is 180 degrees wrong from the law.
But who knows to go look up the law? I mean, it's in the law. We have actual law that tells what school board members should be doing. And it's everything. They direct the superintendent to do the things that they can't do. I mean, it's absolutely, I just cannot,
Yeah.
People need to take the power
I told
back.
Well, Jenny, and I told you about my meeting with the superintendent in Edmond prior to when I was running for school board, brought me in there, was saying, hey, this is what all we do. It was just a coaxing, getting you into the habit of already, you just basically do what we say. I mean, that's what the whole thing was, literally.
Yep.
Correct.
We're the expert. We're the expert, and you just go with us.
So Ashley and me, we're copacetic. She says, sounds like the entire system needs to be destroyed and rebuilt because this is just not it.
Well, the truth is the entire system needs to be held accountable. They have amassed power and they have misused it. The law is in the favor of the child and the family for the most part. The statute of limitations, I could go on for days about that. That's got to change.
Yeah, it does.
But
for the most part,
the law is in the favor of the victim, but they have falsely taken power and distorted the law.
Well, and when we look at these schools, what are we getting? What are we getting out of all these billions of dollars pumped in here? All the abuse in one way or another, what are we getting? They're not even performing in any capacity whatsoever. They're not even producing kids that are even proficient.
They're getting as much as 20% proficiency in math. And see, people don't even know what proficiency means anymore. Proficiency just means you can read. That's not excelling. That's not reading to learn. That's not anything else. It's just they can take a test showing that they can read. That's it.
That's at a very low level. That's at a low level. The bar's been dropped on that in the first place. I guarantee you a proficiency level from 1980 is completely different than a reading proficiency now.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. 100%. But again, we can thank Common Core for that.
Michael, the answer to your question is we're getting kids who are too frequently uneducated and now too frequently abused.
Yeah,
that's what we're 100%. Getting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry. I want to come on here with a sunshiny topic one time.
Well, and Kelly's going back to what she said to you earlier, and that she agrees with you. They'll continue to do their best to replace those members every election, and good for her. I mean,
I'm glad Kelly, they got somebody in there.
Yeah, you're right on the right track. And I mean, the worst part is it just takes so daggum long to do that. And I think the thing of it is that we've talked about a couple of things today that we can do that need to be done. And that is, we said, you can get a whole big group if you can get a group of people that will act together and you remove your kids from school for a bit and then just tell the truant officer you're all homeschooling. I mean, What are they going to do? How do they know? That is the one good thing right now about Oklahoma is our homeschooling laws are pretty daggum broad. Get a group together and just constantly go to these school board meetings and just hammer them on a constant basis so that every time you walk in the door, their faces are like they're doing the roll eye things. That's what you want.
Yeah,
Make them roll their eyes every time you walk in the room. The third thing is go to Drummond's town halls. He's running for governor. Go to the town hall, stand there with a sign. What are you going to do to help kids? What are you going to, ask him questions over and over, record them, get them out there on the internet to just provide some backbone for him to do what he says he's going to do. There are a couple of, Kelly says, yeah, big wheels turn slow. And
Tammy's comment though too, Jenny.
Yeah, Tammy says Owasso as a school board member who leads the. I know, Tammy, that's the craziest thing ever.
Plaque is the enemy.
Literally. Plaque is the enemy. Along with the wife of a school board member, we know they only educate about bills and laws that will benefit them. Guess who believes everything they recommend? I'm going to say about 80% of the parents in town. We have deep teacher roots here. I've heard that about Owasso. I totally get that. And yeah, the only problem is, Tammy, it's like you guys need to go to the PLAT meetings. Nobody wants to do this stuff because none of this is any fun. I don't want to have to play combat, Jenny, with everybody all the time. But the only problem is nobody else is doing it. And Tammy, if you get a group of people to go to those PLAT meetings and you just go, I guess they could say it's a closed meeting because I think it's not, it's a private group. So I guess they could finally say it's a closed meeting and you can't get in, but you could stand outside, hold some signs up again, video, put it up on the internet. PLAC won't let us in, that kind of stuff. At some point in time, and Julia's, just so that you know, Tammy, this is true. We pretty much think PLAC was started to stop rope after we got Common Core repealed because it came up right after that. We were making too much of a difference and they wanted to shut us down. John says, when you report an abuse to administration, then are told to mind your own business. Then you go to the DA. Then you go to the cops. But if administration won't do anything, because you said this before, Mary, that you never ever want to report to the on-campus security or police because they're just part of the local police department, and they're not going because they're part of the local police department. But once they've been their contract has been signed by the local school board.
They work for the school.
They work for the school board. So you're going to have to go outside then if that kind of thing happens, Sean, and you're going to have to talk to the DA, or you're going to have to talk directly to the police and report it directly to them.
Yeah, that's what's difficult.
John Boy's got another comment though.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, shoot. He said, did it all call the police and was told the same thing?
I was thinking the same thing. That school resource officer is working for the superintendent, is working for sure. And when he made his first comment, I thought, yeah, I bet he gets blocked there. That was just my heart of hearts. They have so many ways to make parents believe that they're taking care of something, that they're investigating. And again, this is why we need legislation change. We need legislation change that takes any investigation, even internal investigation of child abuse within schools, out of the hands of that district immediately.
Yeah, but I'm also going to say, though, too, and Julia will back me up on this. Part of the reason, I quit for a little while. I quit to be mayor, but I quit because I was just exhausted with this stupid, stinky system, like Ashley says, which just needs to be burned to the ground and rebuilt from the ashes. But the problem with legislation is this. You still have the problem with, you have the legislation, but if nobody's reporting the problem, then nothing gets fixed. But even if you have the legislation, you have the other problem of, does it actually say in there, is there an admonition for that? Is there well, if you do this, then you will be charged with this, or you will have to pay this. That's the other problem. They leave so much of that stuff. There's
no pride in anything.
Yeah.
Correct.
So they leave that out. So that's a problem. But then the other problem is, still in all, there's the law there's a prohibition against it in the law. So you've got the two things that are important. But if you're not making them follow the law, they're not going to follow the law because it's uncomfortable to follow the law.
Correct. Let me back up one step and just say to John Boy Stanley, what I would do is immediately contact the Oklahoma State Department of Education, and I would file what's called an awareness report. They now have a system where you can go, actually the whole site for the SDE was down yesterday, so I don't know what's going on. But that system through the State Department, Oklahoma State Department of Education, that's sde.ok.gov, and you can find sde.ok.gov, you can find the awareness report system.
I'll bring it up on the screen.
Okay, you can go over their heads at the district. And had this been the previous administration, I would say good luck. That's probably going to get lost in a round file. But Superintendent Ryan Walters' administration and this current Oklahoma State Board of Education has been incredibly aggressive about getting predators out of schools, and they've taken more certifications away than probably everyone else combined in the history of the state. So I encourage you to do that. Jenny, on your comment, I think you're very much correct. I talked at length with some grassroots moms who have done some amazing things down in Texas, and they got pass the trash bill done in 2017, and it seemingly had all the teeth. It said high school administrators, or the school administrator and the superintendent of the district, when any accusation was made, that they had to report. They had to report to the state agency. They had to report to law enforcement. If they did not, it was a felony. So that's about as tough a consequence as you can get. Unfortunately, after, what are we on? Many years now, since 2017, after 6-7 years of this law being in place, not one administrator has ever been prosecuted for that. And there is a huge list that they have amassed of times when they weren't reported.
Yeah.
So it is a fight. I would say act now. We actually have someone, an elected official, who cares about this topic. So go straight to the SDE.
Also, Julia says, and this is true, we did that about porn. We talked to the sheriff. I mean, yeah, we did this. She talked to the DA and the judge. Everybody said that they would stop it from happening, and this much happened.
Correct.
Yeah. Let me bring this up real quick, since they did change the website, because they used to just have a little logo right over here on the side that was a butterfly.
Yep.
Like you just scroll down a little bit, there was a little butterfly logo that said awareness. You clicked on that.
Yes.
I've gone through all the menu items. I don't even see anything that says awareness, but if you scroll down all the way down to the very bottom of the page, there's in the quick access, there's awareness. That's what you're going to click on. And I'm going to have to look through the entire website to see what happened. But it's not that easy to find that awareness link so far. I went through all the other menu items up here at the top, and there's nothing that even says awareness. And I went to accountability. There's nothing in there. So I'm going to have to go through there and find the best place besides just scrolling down on that front page.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm glad to see them changing up the website, because Julia will also tell you too that we went in and met with Hoffmeister. I know, waste of time, but we still did. Went in and met with her about the DEI stuff that they had on the website, and that had gone completely against the state law that we made against all of that nonsense. And basically, the guy who was he's now chief of staff for the AG, told us that the Oklahoma State Department of Education was one of the worst websites in the whole state agency, because basically it hadn't been changed up in years, and there were still things on there from like 10, 15, 20 years ago that nobody had ever removed, that the website really had never been updated. And they made, and I do think that was kind of a brush off, but I also think there was a lot of truth to that, and it did need to be redone. Tammy says it would make their perfect data for grants and other special awards off the charts, meaning if they can stay under the radar and still push safety, parents must be informed, even if it's not a law, that they follow policy better anyway. I'm not
Agreed.
quite. So
agreed. There's a huge problem that so often accusations will come up against an educator or a staff member at a public school, and they will be asked to resign. They will scoot out the door, and then parents whose children were put in direct contact with that person are never, ever, ever notified to have that conversation to make sure their child wasn't a victim of abuse at the hands of this person. It's absolutely unacceptable.
Well, I don't know. Is there anything else before we get off for today? Because we're pushing the 2-hour mark again.
Nope. I think the last thing I would say is if that anyone's in the area on the McGee criminal case, if you're looking for a spring break trip, March 18th at 9 a.m. in Hughes County Courthouse in Holdenville. That's March 18th at 9 a.m. is the next hearing on this case, where we start to see with some public pressure what this judge, what these prosecutors are going to decide about
I think everybody
evidence.
who is in range needs to go to that. So March 18th at 9 a.m. Hughes County Courthouse.
And that's in Holdenville. You can't miss it. And I will tell you that the hearings so far on this have been packed in support of survivors. So
we just need to keep I may even, if I can, I may even travel down there myself and be there and try to because this is no. I mean, I get verklempt and I can't talk about it because it makes me so aggravated. Just but again, the only people that are going to stop this is who, Michael? Mm-hmm. Is who, Mary?
Yeah, us.
Everybody turn around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, these people are not going to come to help us. And the only way that we're going to get them to help us is to make their lives uncomfortable. So do you hear me, A.G. Drummond? You want to be our governor, get this stuff done, or we'll follow you everywhere. We'll become your favorite little group of people who stand in the back of the room and go, well, what about kids?
How about we need to have a little hashtag or whatever. You want to be governor, protect our kids.
Oh yeah, maybe we ought to come up with a little. If I've got time,
something to that effect.
Yeah. So Steph asked if Mary can write about it. So for those of you who don't know, who may be on today and are not aware, if you go to rope2.org, which is our website, you can see it. It's in Michael's and my names. If you'll go to rope2.org, if you'll just stay on the page, if you'll look for something and stay on the page for a minute, you can sign up for our newsletter. And I usually put things like that in the newsletter, but also too, after every podcast, I write up a little thing about the podcast and I put it up on the website, and I will add stuff. I'll add this to the little write up. I've got it in my notes. I will write it up, add it in there, and about some of the things that we talked about. And I'm even going to put in that little write-up the things that we talked about, that we as activists, that we as taxpayers, that we as people who want to make sure these kids are protected can do, the things that we've talked about on this podcast that we can do. And I'll just make sure we get that out there to make sure everybody understands it's our responsibility. These are the things that we can do to make those people that we have to pay whether we want to or not, because it's all sucked out of our property taxes, to make them do what they're supposed to be doing. And by that, I mean the county level. The county is assessed on our property taxes. So the people who work for the county come from our property taxes. Steph says, awesome. And then I'm very efficient. And I'm going to say, I hope that that's true. Julie says, people that truly believe that we should protect children, that's who will stop it. I completely agree. Yeah. And I think that's all of us who are on here today. So, Mary, we love you very much. I'll just say it.
I love you back. And for anyone, thank you to everyone listening today in the comments. And they clearly care about children and they care about truth. Go to V1SUT.com. It'll take you straight to the publication's Substack page, and subscribe. You just have to give your email address, and you will, in your email box, you will get updates about this case.
So there you go.
Yeah. Well,
Guys,
and if I can just plug another one of Mary's articles.
Yeah.
That article, Mary, that you wrote on Lyme disease and Plum Island and government involvement. I mean, you want to talk about truth and just unbelievable. I mean, awesome work in that article. I would advise everybody to go read that.
Thank you very much. It's very timely with this big change in federal government. I think we're going to learn a lot of truth, and I'm going to have a follow-up article to that is really Oklahoma specific, because if you don't understand the origins of Lyme disease, you won't understand why another plague is specifically hitting Oklahoma carried by the same tick. So keep a look at V1SUT.com and we will update that. I had no idea that our government was inflicting a very particular plague on Oklahomans.
Well, that's interesting. I want to know about that for sure. As somebody who used to work for the, used to be an epidemiologist at the State Department of Health, I never heard, I actually wrote a paper that got an award on ticks and never heard any of that stuff. That was back in the 90s. So I think 97.
Right. Let's book a date. We'll do a podcast on that. It's a good topic.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. All right. Just to let you know, we will have our friend Julianne Romanello on with us on Friday. She's going to be talking about the digital currency dialectic. So make sure you tune in on Friday. That should be very interesting. Robert says, Plum Island, new department facility being built in like Kansas or something.
It just opened. Yes.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yes. Because we want to do animal research about agriculture and use those pathogens in agriculture country, just in case it leaks, so we can get as many cattle as possible.
That's awesome. And don't forget, Biden pardoned Fauci preemptively.
He certainly did. What truths will we learn?
Yeah, he'll still be out there running around like the crazy man he is.
All
right, Mary, we love you. Everybody who tuned in, honestly, we love you too. I know I'm speaking for Michael, but I'm sure you would say the same thing. We love you too. We really do appreciate that, because one of the things that, we changed our name to the Rope Report because we are touching on as many topics as we possibly can. Oklahoma, we say we're red. We're not red. I mean, we're doing Democrat stuff all the time. And the only way to figure out what these things are and to get people up to date on those is to inform them. And as we've talked about today, the mainstream media isn't doing that. So Michael and I are here to be able to do this and inform you. But we also have a job for you. And your job is to take the information that we give you and tell as many people as you can, because the government is us. We, the people. That's who we are. But we've got to take it back. And the only way to take it back is by becoming activated. But you have to know what's going on before you can jump in. We're here to try to inform you to the best of our ability. But then once we do, it's your job to go out there and make these things happen. And we'll be supporting you all the way. And if you come to us and tell us what's going on, we will do our dead level best to get it out there and inform everybody. So thank you so much for being with us. We really, really do appreciate you so very much, and appreciate Mary and everybody who comes forward. And anything else before we get off here, Michael?
That's it. I think it's imperative that we figure out some kind of campaign to get in front of AG Drummond running for governor. I mean, I think that was an excellent idea, Jenny, and we have got to not just let that fade away. We have to really take some action on that, because you call him out in public in front of people at a place where he's not ready to answer that question. I mean, I would love to see that video.
Well, Julia can attest to the fact that we did that to Mary Fallon quite frequently. That's how I got the idea. Julia says, thank you, Jenny and Michael. Thank you for being journalists. We're doing our best. we're doing our best. But yeah, we almost got arrested one time because Mary Fallon wasn't didn't appreciate the fact that we had followed her all the way to the Oklahoma Historical Society to set up shop outside with our signs. But you know what? We finally won. And so we just are going to have to do that very same thing. And the way to do it is to do. Julia says that was so fun. It was fun. And it can be fun. So let's make it fun and let's go get the AG.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We'll talk to you soon. We'll be there on Friday with Julianne. Thanks again, Mary, for being with us. And we'll see you on Friday at 9 a.m. right where you are. Have a great day.
Bye.